Thank you, Dr. Damanhoury. Any questions, please? I have a question over there. Can you please give the mic?
Yes, my friend.
Go ahead,
I can hear you. Go ahead.
You talked about endo crowns.
Yes.
And you said that you use them when you have a shorter crown.
Yes.
And the studies you showed that they are better results than the normal.
Yeah, I didn't have the time actually there was one study over here that I had to skip because of the time. But actually there was one study that have looked at the forces and the location of the forces over the endocrown. So first of all, the location where the forces are actually subjected on the endocrown differs much, makes a big difference. So if you have your contact points near the margins of the endocrown, that's a much better result. If those points of contacts are away and very close to the cusp tip, in this case you have more tilting effect because of the lever action, and you might end up with a loosening of your endocrown. So in this case, when you have a long crown, in this case the endocrowns might not be the best option for you. So if you have a longer crown, because of the lever action and the tilting action, I don't think this is the best option.
Okay. Another thing about endocrowns, is the remaining tooth structure inside the chamber has to do with the choice of endocrowns?
Of course. This is another point also that we have to consider. You have to have a sufficient pulpit chamber space, as well as the remaining tooth structure around, or the axial walls of the tooth structure has to have enough sufficient tooth. And this is actually another investigation that we are working on. Both with this investigation are submitted for publication. So we are also looking at the width of the remaining tooth structure, the depth of the preparation, as well as the size of the pulpit chamber.
Can we say that in general we can use it more in molars, since we more have tooth structure?
Well, I think for premolars it will be a much better idea if you, especially that you have more larger canals, you have better configuration of the roots, you don't have that severe curvature in the roots. I think it will be a better idea if you extend your restorational slightly to engage more in the canal than just doing an endocrown in the pulpit chamber.
But you prefer them with molars than in premolars?
Definitely, with molars more than premolars, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any more questions, please? Yes, over there.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I have two questions. If you will compare the ferrule effect with the bone support, which of them is more critical and important for the fracture resistance of the tooth? The second question regarding the study which
let me answer this one first, because it's a big one. Yes. Of course, as we said, it's a multifactorial thing. So there is no a simple answer to this question, unfortunately, because both of them are very important. You're talking about the fracture of the tooth in comparison to affection of the periodontium and maybe loosening of your restoration of your tooth, as well as also if you don't have enough bone support, maybe with better ferrule you will preserve the integrity of the tooth, but still with severe or with excessive forces you might end up again with fracture of the tooth. So I think both of them are important. Maybe the ferrule effect have better results, but still both of them are important, I think.
So you think it's justifiable to do crown lengthenings in order to obtain the ferrule on the
again, as I have demonstrated, it's not only, I cannot go and jump to crown lengthening immediately. I have to consider all those factors. I have to consider the crown root ratio. I have to consider the aesthetic result at the end. I have to consider the effect of the crown lengthening on the adjacent teeth. So in this case, if it is not possible to do the crown lengthening, I think it's going to be a much better idea if you go for orthodontic extrusion, as I have showed in the presentation.
One last thing about the study, you showed comparison of materials for endocrowns.
Yes.
Now, the fracture resistance of the hybrid material was better.
With the hybrid material is better, yes, yeah, exactly. And this is not only in the endocrown, it's the same result have been demonstrated for many other restorations, for conventional crowns, for full crowns, as well as inlays and onlays.
Yes, but the failure rate in general, was it also better, or?
It was better because we were looking at the failure of the restoration as well as the tooth itself. So in rigid restorations, a little bit more rigid restoration like the Emax, you will have more failure of the tooth than failure of the restoration. With ceramics, you might have a mixed type of failure between the restoration and the tooth structure. With those type, you will have failure at a higher rate, at higher stresses, and if it fails, it will fail in a favorable way, so you'll not have fracture of the tooth itself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.